Good evening, everybody. So today's gospel talks about the Beatitudes that belong to the Sermon on the Mount. And the Beatitudes appears twice in the gospel. One in the Gospel of St. Luke, and the other one is in the Gospel of St. Matthew, as we heard today. And the Beatitude is the greatest wisdom teaching of Jesus among people. And the Beatitudes helps us navigate our life to God and to find our identity in the relationship with God. So, the word Beatitudes in Latin means an abundant happiness. And the Beatitude leads us to a true peace, true joy, and to happiness. So what kind of peace in the Beatitudes? What kind of happiness in the Beatitudes? And what kind of joy in the Beatitudes? The peace in the Beatitudes is the peace of Jesus Christ. And as Pope Francis says, the peace without the cross is not the peace of Jesus. That's why the peace in Beatitudes is the God's presence among our life. And that's why the Beatitudes are not much about what we do, but how we do, not much about our actions, but much about our relationship with God and with others. And the happiness in Beatitudes are the happiness of God. God is our happiness. And the happiness in Beatitudes are manifested by our faith, by our love, and by our hope. And the happiness in the Beatitudes is the way to grow in our holiness. And the joy in the Beatitudes is the gift and the fruit coming from the Holy Spirit. And it is a kind of spiritual joy. And the more we experience this joy in God, the more we can grow in holiness, the more we can grow in virtues, the more we can grow in a relationship with God every day. And that's why the Beatitudes help us to lead to peace, to joy, and to happiness. And in the gospel, we learn that Jesus Christ is the Beatitudes. Jesus Christ doesn't merely speak and teach the Beatitudes. Rather, Jesus Christ himself is the Beatitudes. He lived the Beatitudes perfectly in his life. And in the gospel, we can learn that Jesus is the poor in the spirit. Jesus is the humble one. Jesus is the meek one. Jesus is the one persecuted, afflicted. And Jesus is the merciful among people. That's why Jesus is the Beatitudes. And that's why we are called to follow him. And to follow Jesus is to become a person of the Beatitudes. We follow Jesus by becoming the people of Beatitudes in our life, in our family, in our community. And there's another point in today's gospel, we can see a connection between the story, today's gospel, and story in the Old Testament. The mountain recalls Sinai in the Old Testament. And as we heard in the Old Testament, Moses went up to the mountain to receive the 10 Commandments from God. And today, Jesus went up to the mountain to offer his teaching and new principles, new rules for people. And the difference between the Beatitudes and the 10 Commandments is the 10 Commandments are a basic rules and basic principles of morality that mention our responsibility to God, our responsibility to others, and our responsibility to ourselves. However, the Beatitudes, as we heard in today's gospel, is a calling beyond the 10 Commandments that makes us navigate our life and create our relationship with God in our life. Moreover, Moses in the Old Testament went up to receive the 10 Commandments. But today, the people went up to the mountain to receive the Beatitudes. That means with the Beatitudes, with Jesus, people get much closer to God. And likewise, with Jesus Christ, with the Beatitudes, we are getting much closer to God in our life. And that's why it's time when we hear the message from the Beatitudes, we can figure out some more ways of our life to get much closer to God through our prayers, through our participation in Mass, through our receiving sacraments more frequently of our life. That is the way of Beatitudes. That is the way of this message Jesus brings us into the gospel. Brothers and sisters, the way of Beatitudes is also the way of becoming saints in our life. Sometimes or many times, we have some wrong ideas of what a saint is. Sometimes, maybe we thought saints are those who never committed any sins, or those who never feel angry, feel impatient, or those who never show their revenge, their hatred in their life. But it is not, because saints were not born saints. Rather, they became saints. And that's why this change doesn't happen overnight. Rather, it is a process. It is a journey of each one of us to follow Jesus, to follow the way of cross, and to become the witness of Jesus in our life. And that's why St. Augustine says, every saint has a past, and every sinner has a future. God has a plan for saints. And also, God has his plans for each one of us to become a people, a person of Beatitudes. And the way of Beatitudes not only help us to receive the heavenly rewards from God, but also give us a way of leaving behind, a way of walking away, a way of letting go in our life. And that's why the way of the Beatitudes is the way of the cross of Jesus. And we are called to leave behind of our life. We are called to leave behind our revenge, our selfishness, our resentments, and our own life to follow Jesus, to receive true peace, true joy, and true happiness in our life. Brothers and sisters, today It's a good opportunity for each one of us from today's gospel message that help us to become a person of beatitudes, become a people of beatitudes of our life. And we are called to navigate our life with the way of beatitudes. We are called to follow Jesus with the way of beatitudes. And we are called to become the witness of Jesus with the way of beatitudes.